Hi, I'm Jack Cambruzzi, and today we're going to be going over my individual report number 2. So for this report, I'm choosing the company Blackstone. They're a very large asset manager focused on investing in stocks and bonds, real estate, private equity, and insurance. And this is something that's personally interesting to me because I'm a finance major and I'm very interested in the wealth management field, but also I have an interest in entrepreneurship and real estate. And due to Blackstone's presence in real estate investments as well as mergers and acquisitions, I think they nailed both of those on the head. And also, I find it very interesting how large of diversification they have as well as long-term success within the industry. So for this video, first of all, I'm going to be focusing on the strategic analysis and the overall strategic challenges faced within the external environment as well as the internal company. So we're going to start off with the pestle analysis. Politically, they're facing a lot of scrutiny recently with residential real estate and buying up of single-family homes. There's been a lot of politicians within the United States who are pushing laws to prevent investment banks like Blackstone from buying up single-family homes as well as owning them, which is going to be a major issue. Economically, some challenges are just overall interest rate volatility. High volatility of interest rates leads to higher risk of investments as well as higher risk of a market crash. And if the market were to crash, it would be very bad for their business, very bad for customer base, and overall just lose them tons of money. Next, some social challenges are just along with their reputation and public perception. The public doesn't typically look at large investment banks with trillions of dollars and tons of control and power over companies very positively, so they're just not very liked in a lot of public perceptions. Next, we've got the technological challenges specifically associated with the race for AI and the race to incorporate AI in your business. If you fail to do so, you're going to get left behind, and these other companies are going to have some advantages over you if you don't correctly incorporate AI into your business. So, major challenge within the industry. Environmental challenges include sustainability rules. This is also a legal and political issue, but as governments start to increase the amount of rules behind sustainability, Blackstone will face issues just because they have a ton of mining and oil drilling companies, which aren't good for the environment. So if these standards are pressed more, they're going to lose money. And then some legal issues are associated with just SEC pressure and monopolistic pressure, as if there are more laws incorporated, it limits the amount of ways you can make money, limits the amount of companies you can buy within a single industry, which just overall leads to less profit for the company. Next, we're going to be going over Michael Porter's 5 forces and some strategic challenges associated with that. So first of all, there's pretty low threat of new entrants within this industry, so not really any strategic challenges with that. However, the bargaining power of suppliers is pretty mid to high, and in this case, the suppliers are the people who are coming up with the investment strategies, so typically people who are working for these firms, and they can pretty easily switch to a different firm who pays them more money, or go and start their own firm and make more money as well as become a future competitor of Blackstone, which is the main issue. Bargaining power of buyers is pretty low. However, it is an obvious strategic challenge to constantly be innovating and maintaining customers and producing high enough returns to not lose their customers and not have their buyers or customers switch to a competing company. Next, the threat of substitutes is pretty high, and this is a major challenge just because they're competing against independent investing as well as things like ETFs, which offer very little to zero fees associated with the investment and return on these investments. And then another strategic challenge is associated with the competitive rivalry, which in this industry is very, very high, as there's multiple very large, experienced, and successful companies, as you can see on this picture to the right of the slide, who are constantly just innovating and producing good returns, and Blackstone needs to be always competing with them or they will lose customers and lose overall money to these companies. Next, we're going to be going over the strategic challenges associated with the VRIO analysis. So some of these major challenges are associated with a diverse portfolio of assets, as even though Blackstone has a very diverse portfolio, which is very valuable, in this industry it's not rare at all, as these large companies that I mentioned on the last slide have a very, very diverse portfolio. All of them do. So it's not really rare, and it's imitatable for these companies, which is a strategic challenge. Next, we're going to be going over the Blackstone brand, which I do think is valuable, but again, in this industry, having a brand like that is not rare, and I don't think that Blackstone has organized their brand that well, because I know about them as I'm a finance major and I'm very interested in this stuff, But I think if you ask the general public, they're not going to know Blackstone as well as a BlackRock or Vanguard or JP Morgan Chase. And I think that is losing them potential customers and profit since they don't really organize their brand in a good enough way to have it more well known by a lot of the public people. And then finally, their size and spending power, very, very valuable, but again, just not rare in this industry as there's tons of massive companies with more or equal amounts of money and backing behind them, which just makes it a very big challenge to continue competing with these companies, continue innovating, and continue having customers over rival companies. Next, we've got the business and corporate level strategy. Blackstone's business strategy is definitely a focused differentiation strategy. They're not worried about cost leadership. They're not the most affordable option, but they instead are focused on producing unique advantages and great returns. However, a challenge of that is that they are becoming a lot more common for these unique advantages, and since these companies are so massive, it's not very difficult for them to recreate any advantages that Blackstone is able to produce. Because of this, a major challenge is going to be constant innovation. They need to be constantly innovating, constantly producing better returns, and constantly competing within the industry, which is a major challenge and very difficult to do. And just another challenge within their business is that they have a very large size, so they can't really invest with as high of a risk as some of these smaller firms, which could limit their returns and make these smaller firms look more appealable because they have larger returns, which is more attractive for a customer. Their corporate strategy is definitely the buy, borrow, build. They're buying investments, they're buying companies, stocks, they're borrowing money from insurance companies, and they're building real estate and building companies themselves. At this large size, a major struggle and challenge is that they need high levels of communication between all these different branches of the buy, borrow, build in order to just maximize the overall profit and revenue, as if you're not communicating from two branches of the company, you're going to limit some things and you could possibly miss a certain opportunity if there's not a lot of communication, which is difficult for this large of a company. Another corporate strategy challenge is associated with the limited geographic scope, as Blackstone's very present in the United States and Europe. However, they are not globally, and in Asia specifically, I think they could be very more present and have a lot more of a market share, which would produce better returns and more profit for them in the long run. Next, I'm going to be going over the strategic recommendations for Blackstone. First of all, I think they should incorporate AI into all of their businesses. There's very large AI growth recently, and it's going to continue. Competitors are leveraging AI drastically, and if Blackstone does not do the same and improve on it significantly, they're going to be left behind. So directly, I think they should have a mandatory incorporation of AI into all their businesses under their name and all the businesses they have a share of. This will also include investing more into AI-backed companies as well as data centers, just to get in early on these companies and get the largest possible returns as possible. And a specific thing I think they should also do is to deploy centralized Blackstone AI, meaning create their own AI or invest in a company that can create an AI for them that will be directly associated with all the companies under their name to produce the best returns and increase communication behind all these companies under their name to, again, maximize profit. This is going to solve some technical pressures and help gain more business level advantages for Blackstone. Next, I think they should begin lending as a traditional bank. These are lower risk investments with such a large amount of money. They don't need a lot of high risk investments. So you want a lower risk investment, and this will help solve some business strategy and economic volatility issues. This is also another form of differentiation of income. So it's another way for them to make money, which will solve some business strategy, value creation, and competitive rivalry issues. And finally, this is just overall going to help the company grow more, diversify their assets, have another stream of income, which is never going to be a problem for a company like this. So I think they should start specifically with business loans just because that's more where they're used to, operating is within businesses. And then, if they choose to, they could expand to other types and make even more money with this strategy. Next, I think they should expand their business to Asia. A lot of their revenue is not coming from Asia, and I think that if they are to hire specific teams focused on China, Japan, India, and South Korea, which are all global and massive economies, and invest into these economies, they can create massive potential growth, massive potential gains, and they can really grow their competitive scope and solve one of the corporate geographic scope issues, as well as just create more business differentiation, decrease threat of substitutes, and again, just help with overall growth and increase their stance as an investment bank in the world, one of the big. Thank you.